So this is Nutrition Lab Day 1. I'm going to go over what we're going to do today so you have an idea. We're going to go over how Nutrition Lab works, history and its track record, organization and lessons, reference sources, things that makes it hard to lose weight, how much time it takes, how much it costs to follow the diets, scheduling with Nutrition Lab, how long it is. We can go over metabolic syndrome and why that's important and the differences between active obesity and inactive obesity, and the fitness wellness chart. Talk about what slows down your metabolism, cheat meals and their impact, 10 nutrition rules that all diets follow, 11 foods you should avoid, how to build healthy habits. We have some compliance sheet handouts. We'll go over smart nutrition goals and fast nutrition goals using a shopping list and a handout for that. We'll go over a food shopping guide, the 80 superfoods you should be eating, as well as the next 11 nutrition sessions in an outline format so you know what's coming next.
Got it.
So what is Nutrition Lab? It's a comprehensive nutrition program for weight loss and better health. It's taught in a small group setting. We'll provide you with accountability for your decisions, educate you to make better choices, and empower you to lose weight. You can make smarter, healthier decisions in restaurants and at home with Nutrition Lab. What I do in Nutrition Lab, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about how to be successful at weight loss for the rest of your life. This diet is a diet you can follow forever, and it is one of the healthiest ways to eat. I'm going to make every lesson as fun and interesting as possible. Not everybody finds nutrition as exciting as I do, but I do try to spice it up a lot so it's at least interesting so you look forward to going. I'm also a biomedical engineer, so I'm going to pack every session filled with brim with science and show you where everything comes from. I'm going to make you do work in workshops and make you apply the information so that you really understand what it is and how it works.
Okay.
My experience coaching nutrition, I've been coaching since 2014. I've coached over 300 people. This diet works 100% of the time. That is a huge claim. It does so because I interact with people following it, and I find when they don't follow it correctly, a lot of diets work consistently, but people either give up on it or they make implementation mistakes and they think they're following it. Because of the interactivity of this, I can listen to what's going on, I get feedback, and then I can help correct maybe oversights from people. That said, it's not magic. Once you stop following it and you go back to the old way you're eating, you'll gain the weight back. Pretty much the speed that you lost it. So, you know, there's both like a weight loss and then there's like a maintenance, and that's its own lesson. And if you don't follow the stuff in the maintenance, you'll put in a lot of work and it will creep back on you. You can't stay on this diet indefinitely. It's healthier than what you're eating now. There's no pills, no powders, or pre-made foods. Nutrition has varying, people have differences of opinion on nutrition, even people who are experts at it, and differences of opinion are okay. I'm going to teach you that you should eat some tofu, for example. You may not like tofu, or you may have a problem that it's GMO, right? That it's modified. That's okay. You don't have to follow everything. You have to apply what I teach you anyway. For example, I'll tell you should eat nuts. I don't eat any nuts. Because, well, this reason here, I am going to eat the entire jar. It doesn't matter what happens. I will wake up in the middle of the night and I'll eat the whole thing. And that's like 4,000 calories. And that's not good at all. So, you know, similar to nuts are flaxseed and chia. And if you try to eat flaxseed raw, it's disgusting, right? So you got to do all this preparation for it. The other trick that I do for nuts is I actually put it into my like oatmeal, and I like shake it up and put it in there. So I'll eat it with oatmeal, but I'm not going to fish it out with my hand to get to the nuts. It's too much work. And so that's the modification that I make. If you can eat, you know, 1 ounce of nuts and call it a day, great. And if not, maybe you need to use another application for it. Let's talk about meal plans. Will I provide a meal plan? Will I provide you with a meal? Okay. So meal plans, I'm going to provide you with a meal plan. I'm going to teach you how to eat healthy for the rest of your life. I'm going to teach you how to make good decisions. I'm going to teach you all the steps you need to consider when, you know, thinking about what to eat. And so what does that mean? Well, I'm an attorney, right? And so that's like talking around the question. Yes, I'm going to provide you lots of meal plans. In fact, I think it's lesson 5. It's a workshop on building meal plans. I'm going to build meal plans live for people, in front of people. I'm going to give you template meal plans and, all the meal plans that you could possibly want. So should you just come to I think it's the 5th session now. It's just the 5th session. It'll be on sugar WOD, which lesson it is. And the answer is no, because the meal plan is only going to work for you right now. And once you start to lose weight and make changes, you need a new meal plan. And you need a meal plan if you're traveling and if your food preferences, taste, change, and all these things, right? And so what I'm really doing is teaching you to eat so you don't need a meal plan. I don't use one, and I don't have one. Basically, it's a way of thinking about food and organizing your meals so you don't need one. And that gives you freedom to eat wherever you want, pick whatever food you want, and still lose weight. This is my chart when I started for this 2022 cycle. I started at 200 on August 1st. Right now, I'm down to about 189. That took about 30 days or so. I'm trying to get to 165 by the end of this competition. It's going to take a lot of work, but it'll be awesome because then I can compete with all my 25-year-olds in the gym. It'll be good.
That's the goal.
That's the goal. So how does Nutrition Lab work? It's organized like book chapters. You'll see each chapter stands on its own. So they're all like lesson plans. If you miss one, you can we'll have it twice a week so you can attend the other one, or you can just miss it because I do review key concepts in other ones. Like, we'll talk about macros a little bit today, and there'll be another lesson on macros. So there's some overlap to help you if you miss something. And none of the lessons themselves independently are vital, right? They are kind of modular, and I could change the order of a lot of them, right? I could make lesson 4, lesson 9. I put them in kind of a priority order where, they're foundational principles that are important to learn first. And that's really kind of how it works. Having coached nutrition for almost 10 years, I can tell you that coming 2 to 4 times a month has had much better results than like once or every other month. And it's because of you're constantly getting feedback and the accountability from it. When the consistency drops, you tend to see a dropping of performance. But I spell it all out for you. Really, these are the 3 things you got to do. You got to make it to the gym, eat what I tell you, and you're going to lose weight. It's really that simple. So let's talk about some of the hard questions on nutrition. How much time does this take? It takes me about an hour a month to do this, not including presenting and teaching people how to do this, but the actual diet, that's all it's going to take you. You have to add in time for the number of Nutrition Lab sessions you're going to come to.
Okay.
Nutrition Lab is every other Saturday at 10, and it's every Sunday at 6. On Thursdays, it's not a makeup session. I changed how this works. It's the same session, right? Since it's every other Saturday and Sunday, and this is every week, right? This is going to follow roughly the same sequencing. You just have to look on SugarWise to see what lesson it is. You don't come to the same lesson twice. It'll say on SugarWise lesson 2, lesson 3. You'll see there's a check mark you can do on SugarWise and keep track on SugarWise what you've done. This way you'll know which ones you did. You'll be able to see it on the app if you have private, semi-private, or Nutrition Lab on your membership profile. If you find you can't see it, it's because you don't have access to the membership. How much does the diet cost? It's anywhere from, you're going to save anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a month on eating because of you're going to buy foods that are less expensive. You're going to reduce costs by not going to restaurants, not drinking as much alcohol, and not buying more food than you need. Let's talk about sources of nutrition. If you've ever read any nutrition books or taken any online courses, you'll find that in nutrition, no one ever cites their sources. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. For one, you wouldn't need the coach if he told you where all the information came from. So there's kind of the protection of their own business. And then perhaps the sources don't agree with what agenda the person's trying to put forward. But of course, I'm not like that. In fact, really, my goal in nutrition at Stand Still is a lot of people come to lose weight and improve their fitness. And so my goal is to get you that information as easily and as fast as possible. And for that reason, I'm just going to give them to you. If you look in the lesson one handouts, which is on Discord, I gave you all the sources. If you want to do the work yourself, this one's about 400 pages, about 900 pages. You need to read most of the articles on Healthline, Precision Nutrition, just about everything underneath this link for diseases and things like that. Mayo Clinic and Cleveland.org. That's where it all comes from. There's really nothing else. This is where I built the whole thing from. I tell you, have at it. Totally can do that. And some people have done that. It's a lot of work, but that's where it all comes from. Oh, if you see, I'll do it next time, but let me see if I can go back. If you see this icon, that means that in the handouts, I've provided you what you see on the slide and then more information. So you don't really need to take notes when you're seeing this. It means that I've given you a handout on it. We have one person, so we're not going to divide into any teams. But I'm going to have you play this little game with me. And the question is, what has made it hard for you to lose weight? I actually took a poll of about 100 clients and I asked them what the challenges were. And I put the top 14 answers on the board. What has made it hard for you to lose weight? What do you think people said?
I mean, a lot of diets are yo-yo dieting. You kind of lose a bit of weight and then it jumps back up because it's not a sustainable diet. I find that once you sort of lose rhythm in the routine, I'm a pretty big creature of habit. So once I lose that rhythm in the routine, I find it hard to jump back in. But once I'm in the routine, I do quite well. And then probably alcohol and everyone's particular vice of choice, sweets or whatever that might be.
Those are pretty good. The last two you mentioned are definitely things people struggle with, sweets and alcohol. The first two you mentioned are not actually what other people said, although those are really good. Those are really good challenges, right? Here's the list of what I got back. So you'll see the numbers, they add up to 100. Maybe some of the stuff you said could be lack of planning to some degree, right? Or maybe don't know what to eat. But a lot of what you're talking about, we're going to cover today, because consistency and applying this to yourself and the rebounding effect is really important not to do. I'm going to show you, actually have my actual weight tracker so you can see what I've been doing. Let me see if you can see this. Is that in focus? Yeah. You can see that, okay?
I can see it all right, yeah.
You can see that it's not a straight line, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what you're going to see on this diet. It's not going to go down evenly. You're going to see bumps, and it has to do with the fact that your body doesn't lose weight evenly, and there's hydration and things like that. This is the same graph, just kind of showed in histogram. Are any of these other items things that you struggle with that I can go over with you and give you some help with? Or
yeah, I mean, the lack of planning was definitely sort of part of the routine, I think, because it's just being able to sort of say, all right, it's Sunday again. Let's, sort of think out what we're going to have today. And if I don't do that on the Sunday, that means I don't have the food, which means I don't, it's easy when you don't have the stuff you need to just say, all right, well, I'll just order something in. And then, I mean, there is a bit of, the wine and alcohol. I think I need to I'm trying to consciously make some changes there. Eating out frequently has changed a bit since we've had a kid, because we cook and give what we eat to the baby. And so if we eat badly, baby eats badly, and that's not cool. Okay. Yeah. So that's helpful. But ultimately, yeah. And then, eating quickly. Don't have too bad of a sweet tooth, fortunately. And the time, the meal prep time, I guess too. Time is just a sort of tricky thing now. But yeah, those are the sorts of things that planning, time, and
alcohol. Okay. So planning, we're going to be talking about planning all the time. When it comes to lack of planning or time to prep meals, I work full-time for the government. I work part-time for a patent company and somewhat full-time for Sand and Steel. And I don't have time. I don't have problems with time to prepare meals, nor do I have trouble with lack of planning. And it's because of the way I do it doesn't take very much time at all. If you have a method where it's very time intensive, that can be a real barrier. And so I'm going to show you how I can still, manage everything without this being a time pressure on me. And for me, that was a big thing because I don't have time to make 10 beautiful meals on Sunday and do the shopping. And that's a great system if you have that kind of time and that kind of, planning. And then you have this whole big chart of everything. Oh my God, I just don't got that kind of time. And it's just too much work for me. And so some diets use that. I don't teach that because I don't think it's realistic to follow consistently. And then you stop following it and then your weight bounces back. Yeah. We're going to talk about wine and alcohol today and a couple of sessions and what their impact is. But before we get there, let's talk about metabolic syndrome. Have you ever heard of this term?
Yes, but I'm not really sure of this entire context.
So here's your medical definition. It's the complex clustering of metabolic defects associated with physical inactivity, abdominal adiposity, and aging. And what that means in English is as you get older and you have excess visceral fat around your organs and you're not active, you develop a host of different diseases, right? They found this linkage. They're not sure exactly why, and I think it depends on the disease, but there's much higher morbidity rates for people who are inactive, getting older, and have excess body fat, right? Those are, you can think, what are some examples of metabolic syndrome that you've heard of?
You mean?
What are some of the diseases that you get?
Diabetes is...
Yeah, type 2 diabetes. What else?
Yeah. There's all sorts of different failures around, kidney failures and other organ failures that can result from poor dieting. Even heart failure, kidney failure, lung failure. I'm not lung failure, but and then those sorts of things, I guess.
How many do you think of them are life-threatening? 4 choices right here.
Of those 4, I would hope one, but it's probably not that. I hope the more than 20. Oh, of those.
Here's what they are. Here are all the diseases you can get from metabolic syndrome. Okay. Not all of them will kill you, but most of them will. Or, you can get, colon cancer, but nobody wants to be treated for colon cancer, right? You can cure that and it's a whole lot of work. And same thing with kidney cancer and prostate cancer. A lot of them are severe hospitalizations with the percentage of fatality. Strokes sometimes can kill you. Otherwise, they can cause severe damage. Some of them are chronic conditions like gout and diabetes. Some of these things like high cholesterol can be managed with medication. Same thing with the blood pressure can manage this. But, this is what happens in a very high percentage of people when you don't do the right kind of exercise and you have too much abdominal belly fat. And so a lot of what Nutrition Lab is teaching you so you do not join this growing percentage of people who are going to get this. when I was talking with the larger class, we had like 14 people, and I'm like, the odds of an American getting these diseases from metabolic syndrome, it's like 3 out of 10. You know, I don't want anybody in that room to be in that statistic. This stuff is not, good. So when we think a lot about nutrition, maybe we're thinking about getting six-pack abs, and we're thinking about what we might look like. But, this is most of the stuff that I'm concerned with. Important people have died in my family because of metabolic syndrome. It's a big reason I started Stand Still to start with, so that other people wouldn't have to deal with these kind of things and the impact it makes. One of those you mentioned first, type 2 diabetes. To give you an indication, I spoke with my mom, who's a registered dietitian. She's been working in a dialysis center for 35 years. And I asked her how many of her patients over the last 35 years have had type 2 diabetes that were thin. None, not one, she said. Everybody's overweight, none of them exercise. And where people underestimate how difficult that is not exercising and being overweight. It doesn't directly cause type 2 diabetes. It doesn't mean you'll necessarily get it, but you can prevent it by doing these things. You can't prevent all cancer, but a lot of cancers you can if you just do those two things. So how do you reduce visceral fat? One way, of course, is to reduce your total body fat. If you do that, you will reduce your visceral fat. But you can also adjust how much of your total body fat is visceral versus subcutaneous. Subcutaneous fat is a fat that's around your skin, and then visceral fat is the brown fat that surrounds your organs. And the second way was very unintuitive. It shocked the health community for almost two decades ago when they were first finding it. And the answer really is high intensity fitness training. The person who really discovered this linkage is Greg Glassman. He's the founder of CrossFit. The way it works, and there's many, many papers. You can see 2 of them on here, but there's a ton of research that supports this, is if you do high intensity training, and it doesn't need to be CrossFit, it could be any high intensity training for 20 or 30 minutes a day, 3 to 5 days a week, it lowers the amount of visceral fat significantly versus other forms of exercise. So if you're bike riding, which is hard for an hour and a half a day or whatever, bike riding to work, and you're saying, well, that's going to reduce my visceral fat because I'm exercising, it doesn't work out that way. Doing dance and being active generally, like you've heard our, health community say. I mean, being active generally has benefits. It has cardiovascular benefits. It has certain benefits. It doesn't reduce visceral fat, though. And high intensity interval training does. And that's really a key thing. CrossFit, of course, is a great form of that. But, one of the things when you'll see me coach is I really try to drive intensity to the max level that people can do without faults in their technique. Because if you have faults in your technique, it causes injury. But I don't like people to scale down mid-workout, because if you're constantly scaling down as it gets hard, you're not actually getting to that high intensity. You're kind of, caving before you really put your body through what high intensity means. But you can't go so high that you have form defects. You have to be diligent and disciplined to follow the right technique and to, push through it when your body's saying, okay, maybe it's too much, up to a certain level. You can certainly take it too far too. And that's really a lot of it's heart rate controlled.
That was going to be my question, was when we say high intensity, quote unquote, is that going to be, keeping your heart rate between the 160 to 180 range or 200 range?
It depends. Well, I can't give you the number because it varies person to person. Not even like sometimes people like, well, it depends on this and that. For example, my max heart rate is 170 beats per minute. That is the most that I can do before I start to black out from lack of oxygen. Some people have larger hearts and different chamber sizes and things like that. But how hard is that? It's really the max amount that you can work. You can think of it that way. Depending on the way the workout's structured, some of them are faster, some of them are slower. But you should be working hard in your sessions and setting up the workout when we go through scaling so that you should be, trying to push through with good form, but not so much that you're in an overtrained, right? Overtraining is a real deal. The condition called rhabdo is a real thing that you can get from it. If you're doing your recovery right and you're eating right, you really shouldn't be sore the next day. If the soreness prevents you from maintaining that intensity, that's your clinical definition of overtraining. So you can train harder when you're eating better and doing better recovery. And so those things are all balanced. So what is slowing down your metabolism? All of these things: inflammation, psychological distress, sleep, hydration, micronutrients, toxins, fat balance, food allergens, and alcohol. All of these things can slow down your metabolism. The InBody that we have can show your inflammation. It so happens that most of these things raise inflammation. And so this can kind of show you a barometer of how your inflammation levels are doing. Is it a surprise to you that any of these items can slow down your metabolism? Because there's some of the things we're going to focus on. And if you understand why they will affect your metabolism, then I don't need to convince you that we need to control them. If you say, well, I don't get why that works, then I'll explain to you why it does. And so then you'll believe me.
No, I think everything on that list makes sense.
Okay. Let's talk about cheat meals. Everybody's favorite topic.
Sure.
Let's say you decide you want to go to Outback and just be date night, and you get a regular dinner, you're going to split a blooming onion with your wife, and you're just going to have 2 margaritas. And you're just going to do that once a week. Otherwise, we're going to eat clean all week. And we're going to talk about what clean eating means in a follow-up lesson, but you're eating clean and perfectly. How much do you think that's going to impact your weight loss?
Well, I'm going to hope.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Which one do you think it is?
Overall impact?
Overall impact. Just once a week. We're eating perfectly. We're just going out just once a week on Friday. It's not getting anything super crazy. An app, an entree, 2 drinks. That's it.
Yeah, I'm going to guess B. That's what I'm going to hope.
You'd like it to be B. It's not. Right. I'm going to show you. So I set up the following charts and things based on somebody looking to lose 12 pounds in 3 months, right? Your goal may be more or less than that. My personal goal is 3 times that. It's more work, right? But depending on where you are and how much weight you need to lose, maybe 12 pounds is all you need to lose. I know Dawn's trying to lose a little weight, but 10 pounds is about all she can lose before she's going to be thinner than she wants to be. So here's how it works out. On the left, on the red chart, you'll see that's the weight loss going Outback once a week. And the green chart is if you have the same exact diet, but you don't go to Outback that 1 week, okay? The 12 pounds that you would have lost goes down to 3 pounds. And that's because of the impact of this one day on Friday when you have this lack of deficit and it's an overeating day. That's just what the math says. It's actually quite worse than this, right? This is just mathematically what happens. When you eat that way, it resets lots of hormones and things in your body, and you're actually going to lose even less weight in practice. So most likely you'll lose nothing. Because once you get your body organized in terms of like eating well, it takes like a week or so to get everything reset in terms of like addictions and it's kind of the fat burning that goes on. And so if you kind of sabotage yourself every week, it can really slow down everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Take a good look at these numbers. Convince yourself, because this is a problem that most people do, right? You're going to say, well, you deserve it for all sorts of reasons. You could say, I deserve to, you know, it's not even expensive, and this, and I've been working hard and whatever. Here's the damage that's going to happen. Now, I can explain to you where this number comes from if you want to see that. So I can go through that, but I want you to accept this mathematically so that you don't do it. And if you don't agree with it, ask me, and I'll break it down in more detail.
No, I mean, numerically it works.
You still look like you're in a little denial. So ask me why do you, what?
No,
what
I'm just trying to do the mental math around, like, I guess there'd be a difference between the type of things you eat during a cheat meal, but I mean, ultimately,
depends on how you define your cheat meal, certainly. Right. So this cheat meal was defined as just going to, you know, an inexpensive restaurants, right, and ordering what a normal American would order, right? It is not uncommon for people to order an appetizer and 2 drinks and order a normal entree.
Yeah.
How many calories is that? The 2 margaritas at Outback are going to be worth about 400 calories a piece. The entree is going to be anywhere from 800 to 1,200 calories. The appetizer is around 600 calories. When you add up all those numbers, it puts you at a deficit for the day at about 1,900 or negative 1,900, because it's way over the calories you should be eating for dinner, which for you, you'll see it's around 500 to 450.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's dang. Oh, wow.
Yeah, go brain. Do I need to go over this question on the bottom?
I mean, no. I think if that's the impact of one, you can.
Yeah. What will happen? You'll gain weight.
Gain weight.
Is what will happen. And a lot of times that's why people really fail at diets. 2 cheat meals a week, it's going to go the opposite way, and you're going to push so much work into that, it's going to be unmaintainable, and then it's going to work against you. So it's consistency is really key. So 10 diets, 10 rules that all diets follow. You can see it has a little arrow, which means you're going to get the handout. These rules come from, I surveyed about 80 different diets in the years I've been doing this, and I kind of took a list of what everybody did, and I saw what was in common. So the entire medical community and nutrition community agrees with these by and large. So they're probably the most important ones because they're in every single nutrition manual and book and diet I've seen. Even the weird ones that, like, you know, you see like on Facebook, they still follow these things. Okay. Everybody agrees, don't have foods with added sugars. Added sugars add glycemic load, and they make weight loss nearly impossible. It can take lots of forms. Cane sugar, sugar syrup, all these things. Don't eat foods with added sugar. And don't eat any refined carbs. That's another thing that all diets agree with. Breads, pastas, muffins, bagels, cereals. The refined carbs impact your blood chemistry, similar to sugar. Added sugars is a little bit worse, but you tend to eat more of these and can even be convinced that they're healthy. And so you want to avoid any refined carbs. That is just about anything that's made from flour.
Okay.
Eat your vegetables. All diets agree vegetables are super important. The USDA tells you around 2.5 cups a day. I don't think that's nearly enough, because then I'm starving all day. So I eat closer to 5. I will be going over a little later how much you can eat of certain kinds of vegetables. There are maximums that you should be eating, but I'm going to spell all that out in the slides coming up. Omega-3 is critical. It is really important for balancing out your fats. Most people do not have enough omega-3. I will cover omega-3 in detail on the macronutrients lesson, which is lesson 7. And I'm going to show you, I have charts, and we're going to go over it, and you're going to have a whole battle plan. Plus, a lot of the foods in our superfoods list at the end are omega-3 dominant, so that you'll have, you know, a good list of them to know. Micronutrients matter. A lot of people lose sight of this when they're dieting. It's not, yes, calories is important, but micronutrients are very important because your metabolism is important. If your micronutrients are not where they need to be, your metabolism goes down, your energy goes down, you burn less calories. So you got to make sure you're eating nutrient-dense foods. One of those, for example, is vitamin D. Most Americans are vitamin D deficient, even if they're eating well. It's because we're designed to get vitamin D from the sun, and most of us are not in the sun anymore. So I recommend that pretty much everybody takes vitamin D supplements. If you don't want to do that, I would tell you to get your vitamin D levels checked from your primary physician, see what they are. Statistically speaking, you'll find that you are deficient, and then your doctor will tell you to take it. You might get lucky. Some people absorb it better, right? So it's not every person, but it's something around 70% of people. I think I have 40 to 75%. And then there's variances. Like me, for example, my levels are like really low, like without supplements. And so it creates, you know, absorption problems and things like that. It can create bone problems. Vitamin D is important to have. So, you know, if it's just taken, and vitamin D pills are really small, and it's just boom, you can just take care of that problem, you know, without any extra work. And I drink a lot of milk, which you need to be careful about because there's a lot of sugar and calories in milk, but that's even with drinking vitamin D or fortified milk. Trans fats are terrible. They're going to be in some pre-made foods and restaurants, like bakeries and things like that. They're also in a lot of processed foods. Look out for any oil or fat source that says it's hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated. You have to avoid that like a toxin. Trans fats cause people to gain visceral fat. It's been shown. In fact, some states have tried to make it illegal for restaurants to use trans fats. That's how bad they are. But the part of the country that favors, you know, not giving people restrictions and letting people choose their own choices kind of won out against those people who felt that, you know, for public safety, we should ban this, right? And so there's always, in our country, there's always that left and right. This is hurting the country, trans fats. It's hurting the health system. It's hurting obesity. There's lots of good reasons. Trans fats taste good. They're inexpensive. They make the texture of food good. And so people who make those kind of foods fought hard to let Americans choose their own fates, so to speak. You're going to get lots of advice in Nutrition Lab. You need to customize it. Ask. That's one of the big things you should be asking when you hear stuff is, how do I apply this? How do I customize this? And I'll help you do so. Because you have to implement. You can come to every Nutrition Lab session I have, but unless you implement it, it does nothing, right? You just learn about it. And implementation is where this works. Supplements don't replace real foods. Supplements are great to use, but they often have absorption problems. And so I tell people to use real foods when they can and supplements to add to them. But the most important tip is number 10. We've already touched on this. Consistency is key. A diet is 100% effort throughout the week. You can make it easier by having, you know, a good understanding of what to do, but you really need to keep on it. Even a 90% or 10% non-conformance, what I've seen is there's a drop of almost 50%. It's huge. And you saw that with the cheat meal. But if you're consistent 100% of the time, you're going to lose the weight that you're targeting. And a small drop off that, it's just going to have a much bigger impact than you think it should. Okay, top 11 foods you should avoid. You can see this has a handout. I have lots of detail in the handout as to a lot of the like nuances of these things. I'm going to give you broad claims here. Any of them I can go over with you, but there's lots more information on any of them. I'll give you an example. I have pasta listed here. And then people will ask me, what about, you know, pasta I made from spelt? And what about bean pasta or shirataki pasta? There's going to be ranges, right? The pasta you see being made there is, you know, your semolina pasta, which is the one that I'm referring to. but there's a grade of it, right? In general, it's not a great food. It goes from medium bad to really bad, and it's not what you should be targeting. Bread is like that too, right? You have certain breads, like Dave's bread and Ezekiel bread. They're better than Wonder Bread, no question about it. And Wonder Bread's even better than like the bakery stuff you get, like Au Bon Pain, which tastes delicious, but it's not good for you, right? And which is still better than brioche, which you should avoid at all costs, right? Because that's just butter and flour. Creamers, chocolate, chips, and fried foods. Do you have any questions as to why these are on the list, or any exceptions that you want to hear more detail about?
So for example, one thing that I found, or that I bought the other day, are these like the calorie smart like wraps. So along the line of bread. I was wondering what your thoughts were on those.
Okay. We will be covering questions on that in a later lesson because it's a key thing, right? And the wraps, I covered a lot of detail because of some of the questions you're asking. Let me give you a high level of looking at it. So at a first level, I got to look at how many grams of carbs are in your wrap, right? Mm-hmm. Wraps can be made very low calories, or they can have, or with lots, not many because they're small and they're thin, or they can have a lot. So if it's something like 10 grams of carbs in it, I'm not going to be that concerned. It's not that many grams. How much carbs at one time matters. It affects the load of the meal. And I'll be talking about glycemic load and index in a follow-up one. So that's one. And then you're going to see stuff about net carbs, right? That has to do with how much of it comes from starch and sugar and how much fiber is in it. And they subtract it out and they'll say they won't have much net carbs. And lower net carbs is better to some degree. And so that's an important thing to think about. Total calories in the wrap is also important because most bread products have a low nutrition density index, right? They're just kind of empty calories. The bread company can even try to get around that by fortifying it with vitamins and minerals. Those don't get absorbed as well as natural ones. They also tend to break down. So wraps are like pasta. There's better and worse wraps you can have. Would I ever put wraps as a good food to eat that's going to help you? No, it just depends on how much it slows you down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
The size of it matters. Like, I mean, you can think about chips, right? Does it matter if I have 3 chips or the whole bag? You don't need to be a nutrition coach to know that answer. Yes. Serving sizes matter. Does it matter what else I eat it with? Yes. Does it matter what time I eat it with? Yes. All these things matter, right? We like to have black and white clear rules. Your body doesn't follow black and white clear rules. Sometimes I'll give clear decisions to make it easier, like all fried food is bad, right? That's right here. Does it matter what the breading is? Yes, of course it does. Does it matter what you're frying? Yes. Does it matter the kind of oil? Does it matter how it's fried? Yes, all these things matter. And you can change how bad a food is with these kind of things.
Okay.
I got 5 more here. Alcohol, you knew it was coming. Here it is on the list. Fruit juice, processed meats, desserts, and soda. Do you have any questions why these are on the list?
Those all make sense.
Okay. This is a little bit more detail. The handout has even more detail, more explanation. So if you have questions, just take a look at it or break it into more detail. And this is what the article looks like. So one thing I'm going to be asking at the end of the session is what your goals are. These are things you have to change. I already mentioned coming to the nutrition lab and not implementing anything will just make you smarter in nutrition. You won't have any changes. Change is what's going to power this. I'm going to ask you, you can start thinking about it now, to make at least 3 changes today, okay? Your changes need to be smart and they need to be fast, okay? A smart goal is specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, and it's time bound. If you give me a goal that is not all 5 of these things, I'm going to tell you it's not good. I'm going to ask you to rephrase it. Because if you can't hit all these things, it's not something that's going to help you improve. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm also going to require your goal to be fast, okay? For similar reasons. Frequently talked about. It's things you're going to be able to talk about in a nutrition lab. It is something that is going to be going on in your life and not forgotten. Your goal should be ambitious, right? If you tell me, well, Paul, I hear your goals. I'm going to remove 1 drink per week. I'm going to tell you, I think you can do better because it's not going to have enough impact. It needs to be specific. That was also in the SMART goal. That's how I'm going to repeat it twice. It needs to be specific. So I'm going to drink less alcohol. That's not going to cut it, right? Because what the hell does that mean? It needs to be transparent. I do that in a lot of ways. I'm going to make you put the goals up on for everybody to know, because I want you to be accountable to everybody. That helps motivate you to do better, right? If it's something very private, because you have, it could be private reasons why you don't, you can send it to me individually. Some of your goals, I'm sure, won't be that private. So share those. I do, respect that, of course. Any questions on these?
Nope.
Forming a healthy habit. There's lots of professional coaches which teach all this, and psychologists. I've read some of their books. I think this is kind of the easiest way of looking at it. You need a cue. A cue is what teaches you to think about doing the habit, right? And then how are you going to do it as your routine? And then what do you get for doing it in terms of reward? Lots of members in the nutrition lab set up something they're going to give themselves if they hit their goal at the end, right? Whether it's a new computer or a party or whatever it might be. Humans respond really well to direct feedback. Even if you can do it in a week, these things help. Psychologically, they help a lot. So when you think about your goals, think about what's going to remind you to do it, how you're going to build it in, and what kind of reward you want to set up for yourself to form the habit. That's the whole idea. You'll see in the handouts, I gave you this healthy habit tracker. It's a PowerPoint where you can click off on each day whether or not you have done it. I also did it as a Microsoft Word template, right? This is ones that I built off from myself that you can just check off as you're doing. This is a week, the other one's a month. You don't have to use these. You can use a chart. You can use any of the 50 apps for your phone, but you do need a list because it's how you hold yourself accountable and see whether or not you're doing the stuff that you're supposed to be doing. Let's talk about shopping lists. They're one of the easiest and most effective ways to help you eat better. Stores like Wegmans and Whole Foods, and as great as they are masters at getting you to buy stuff you had no intention of buying before you walked in. They are really, really good at it. And when you use a shopping checklist, you take control back from them. This checklist I have over here are the shopping lists. I've built this over many years. It is a really good list. It's organized by where the foods are in supermarkets. And whether you just use notes or whatever, when you go into supermarket, you should have a list of what you're going to buy and then stick to that list. If you see stuff in the store, oh, I should have this and this is healthy, write it in the blank one and get it next time, right? When you're not starving and being marketed to, and half time you're like, you know what, I don't need that for whatever reason. This will also save you money because guess what? The supermarkets get you to buy stuff that's more expensive by tricking you with prices and things like that, making it look like it's less expensive. Shopping guide. This entire shopping guide we're going to go over is a handout. So you'll see it just as it's listed. I told you about that I was going to tell you how much vegetables to have and fruits. You want to eat the different colors as it's listed here, and then be careful about certain ones. Always good means you can have just about as much of it as you like. Good in moderation means you need to pay attention to how much you're having. Good in small amounts means that it is things that can work against weight loss, so you can only have so many. A simple example of that is the avocado. It's a great thing to eat because it has some healthy fats that are hard to get. It has a lot of nutrition in it. It has a lot of calories. You just can't eat as much avocado as you want. You won't lose weight. It's just it's high in calories. And so you have to have it in moderation, right? Black grapes, there's some good reasons to eat them. They're also very high in sugar. So you can't eat too many of them. You know, mix them with the other fruit. Don't have an entire bushel of black grapes. It's just not, it's not going to help you.
I didn't know black grapes had a difference. It's interesting. I didn't know the difference between black grapes and green grapes in terms of their like.
I'm going to cover this in more detail in another lesson, but you'd be surprised at how much the type of food within a class matters. The kind of salmon you buy matters. The kind of apple you buy matters. There's differences amongst them all. In general, a lot of things in the same family are good, but, you know, those kind of changes can make big differences, you know, depending on how broad your classification is. You know, nuts, certainly there's healthy nuts and there's not so healthy nuts, right? Basically, the greener the grape, and you'll see when you actually go to the store, there's actually many colors of grapes. People think it's just black and green, but there's actually all sorts of shades. The lighter the color, the grape, the less sugar it has.
Okay.
If you're in the class of people that have trouble getting enough protein, here are some great sources. This is a challenge for a lot of people, such that I'm even going to give you a bigger chart on the next lesson, because a lot of people have trouble getting enough protein. These are common sources when you're food shopping. You can think about mammals, poultry, fish, shells, sea craters, dairy, and beans as your main sources of protein. And then I just gave you some examples. Some people have trouble getting enough good fat. Here's a great list of a lot of the healthy fats that you can look for in the store. You'll see oils, fruits, nuts, and seeds. That's it. I probably should include, you can include fish on here, although it's not listed particularly. I put it underneath meats, but fish has healthy fat in it as well, plus a lot of your almond products because they come from nuts. Talking about whole grains, I listed the most common ones. This is 95% of the ones people will eat. Whole grains are not ground into flour to make muffins or breads. I don't want to see whole grain bread on your list. You say, it says it right there in the name. It's not. Whole grains are things you have to soak and cook in a pot with a pressure cooker. That's a whole grain. Whole grains, you'll find out, are fine to eat. Ground stuff is not. Okay. We've already talked about sugar, but I'm going to have a whole slide on it just to make the point. Sugar is everywhere in American food. All of these things are different ways of labeling sugar. They're all pretty much the same. Whether it's brown sugar or fruit juice concentrate. I love paleo, but you know, honey is still sugar, and so is maple syrup. It's still sugar to your body. Everything dates, molasses, this is all sugar. Yes, the glycemic index of certain kinds of sugar is different. They're all bad. They just go from bad to worse, right? So it's not like, yeah, I'm aware that maple syrup is slightly lower than corn syrup, but you shouldn't be eating maple syrup either, right? Any questions on this?
No.
This is my 80 superfoods handout. I took this from compiling superfood lists of pretty much all the leading diet companies. The foods will be on here for a lot of different reasons. They could have high nutrition density. They can have low calorie density. They can be high in fiber. They can have benefits such as lowering cholesterol. They can have omega-3. these are things that are high in protein and low in fat. These are things that will help you. When you're looking at what you're eating, you know, I would take a look and see how many of these foods are on this list. And in some cases, you might be able to just switch one food for another, right? If you're eating wild rice or white rice and you're like, you know what, well, wild rice is on here, I'll just make that switch. Paul put it on the list for a reason. You know, if it's a simple switch, these are going to be better choices for you for various reasons. I'll be going over them in lots more detail, why these ones are on here, but it gives you an idea of some things to be looking for.
Okay.
Like another example, you might use peanut oil at home. You know what? Use walnut oil. It's much better for you. I'm going to go over what we're going to cover in the next 11 nutrition labs. The next session, we're going to go over the weight loss calculator and in-body interpretation. For everybody who's coming to that, I'm going to figure out exactly how many calories you need to eat for exactly how much weight you want to lose by the end of this competition. I'm going to break it all out for you. I'm going to do all the math for you. I've built out a specialty calculator. It's probably the best one I've ever seen. That's why I built it. If somebody had built it already, I'd just use it. But I built my own so that you can target exactly how many calories you need to be eating. I'm going to go over all the detail on the in-body so you know what everything means, and we're going to use it in the weight loss calculator. In addition, I'll go over calorie density, nutrition density, and the 15 key principles for expediting weight loss. In the third session, we're going to go through the nutrition lab cleanse. The cleanse helps remove foods that are addictive from your diet. I'm going to do kind of compare different meals for you and show you can swap meals that might not be compliant with ones that are. I'm going to go over what clean eating means and how to do it, as well as go through my protein cheat sheet and bad carb directory. Looks like it's lesson 4. I wasn't sure what lesson it was. That's our meal plan workshop. We're going to go over sample meal plans and help people build new ones. Lesson 5 is the essentials of sport nutrition. In that one, I'm going to cover every question you have about supplements and what if I'm exercising, you know, or if I'm doing a race, or what do I need to eat so I build muscle? If it relates to fitness and sports and weight loss, that's where I'm going to cover this kind of all together, as well as how to use my Fitness Pal. I've been teaching people how to use that for almost 10 years. There's lots of features in it that people don't use because it's a big piece of software. And I'm going to, you know, walk you through all the different features. A lot of them are healthy to use or helpful to use. Lesson 6 is the Build My Plate. It's going to go through our macronutrient calculator, special ratios and serving sizes for what your meals should be looking like. Lesson 7, I'm going to cover macros in lots of detail and help you break out how much you should have, which ones to look for, how to balance them together. Lesson 8, we're going to go through the nutrition label. I'm going to have people read it and understand whether or not this food is healthy or not. The labels are not simple to read. We'll go look at the ingredients and labels and decide whether a food is healthy. We'll go over some recipes in this as well. And I'm going to go through in a comparison of almost all the online food services that you might get and tell you which ones are good for which people, right? On lesson 9, I'm going to go through the 5 elements rule. This is how to build a perfect meal every time. Balancing macros is not really enough. If you really want to burn fat and not muscle, following the 5 elements rule is the way that that's done. On lesson 10, we're going to analyze food journals of past members. I'm going to slice them up and show you all the mistakes everybody's making so you don't make them. If you're brave enough to volunteer your food journal in front of the whole group, I will review that for you too. You'll export it out of my Fitness Pal and I'll analyze it live and have the class help me to do that. Otherwise, I'll just use past ones and anonymize them. 11 is kind of my advanced topics. Glycemic load index. We're going to go over food allergies, anti-nutrients, anti-inflammatories, pesticides, and flavonoids. Make sure you understand how they all work and can impact weight loss. And then lesson 12, we're going to deal with travel, things like being vegetarian, dining out, carb cycling, intermittent fasting, and a 52-hour fast. All right, I told you I was going to make you do this. So tell me, what are your 3 new goals?
All right. Trying to make them smart, trying to make them fast. My first goal is to, well, now that I've learned about the negative impact of that whole cheat meal thing, the vegan nachos I had yesterday were probably not on that list. Even if they were all, I don't know, it was a vegan nacho thing, so they weren't quite as bad, even though they're still chips. So chips are chips and chips. And so I'm going to try to eliminate from my diet a designated cheat meal, and just sort of try to tweak my eating habits over time so that I don't feel like I need it.
Okay, let's make that a discrete goal. So best way to do that is, it'll be a week compliance sheet, and it'll say cheat meals or cheat foods, and you're going to have a number on there, right? One of the things with setting new goals is you need to have awareness of what you're actually doing, right? Sometimes you have to record that because it's usually not as low as you'd like it to be. And so what I want you to do first is just track it, right? Any food that you think that you eat that I might have some issues with, right? You're going to add that as a number. So it might be like a tally, right?
Okay.
Because you might not be able to just go to 0. That may not be a realistic goal for you right now, but you don't know what is. And so in order to know what is, you need to start paying attention to what you're currently doing. So the first goal is for you to start tracking any cheat meals or cheat items. I don't necessarily need to know what they are. That's more work for you. You're just going to create a tally for the week and see how many it is. And then, depending on how many they are and to the extent, we'll do something like halving it or knocking it down by 75%. And we'll probably do that again to get them out.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's one.
One is I know from my own behavior, I need a 30-minute a day cardio routine set at a set time of the day. Because ultimately I often find that I'll say, well, I'll find time during the day. And as the day progresses, I either don't find time or I find excuses. And that's something I know I need to do 30 minutes in the morning to be able to set the day right. And that can be whether it's having reserved my spot for my hour spot for CrossFit, or having, I know it's not on the high intensity, but the bike is there, or going on a run. Those are I know where I will succeed and where I won't on that. So just making sure.
I would do 5 days a week. You don't need to do 7. I think 5 is more reasonable. Nobody said that low intensity or even medium intensity exercise isn't good. It is good for lots of reasons. It helps with other things. It doesn't help lower visceral fats, which causes metabolic syndrome. But, there's all sorts of reasons. High intensity training takes a lot more focus and things like that. It takes more energy, more preparation. You may not have time for that every single day. And so certainly spending half an hour on the Peloton is better than not spending any time, for sure. There's no argument about that.
Yeah. And then the third thing I think is, I've already kind of started, but I want to continue it, is just record what I'm eating every day. Every meal, and then I want to try to account for all of the different foods that I eat and take and drink. Because being able to look at that retrospectively will be important.
Yep. Do it with MyFitnessPal if you can. That's when I teach everybody how to use and how to analyze.
I've got it.
That's a great thing. So those are 3 good goals. And they're nice and transparent. They're easy to list. whether or not you did them. Do you have any questions that we did not go over?
No, I mean, some of the stuff, you know, I'll sign up for some of those classes. I think around macros is a concept I've heard so much about and yet know very little. And so I think that's one I'll probably sign up for. What is appropriate for me? I'm not a small guy, but I think that would be helpful for me.
I'm going to show you on the nutrition page. The list that we went over is actually written right here too, right? The different lessons you can see. And you'll see that in SugarWOD, it'll have the same lessons. You can see, you know, the little details of like what each lesson is going to cover. So you know when they are.
Okay. And we can buy those individually.
Yep. I'm going to go over that with you shortly, because I'm going to also look at your membership too and tell you what you have. So we'll go over that. So other than pricing and how to book with that, I'm going to go over that when I end the recording. Is there any other questions you have?
No, I think it's just a matter of bearing down.
All right. Let's